There we were on this new track, and we didn't know what to expect, but the drivers seemed to like it.
I think everyone liked the track, didn't they? I think the engineers loved the track, the drivers loved the track. One of the engineers at Mercedes was saying to me, the circuit really suits Formula One. I can't believe it's taken us this long to get here.
Well, it was peculiar because I think we predicted, we were kind of dreading the prediction, which would be that they'd go down the straight, maybe get a DRS pass and then hold everyone up for the next lap, which didn't happen because we saw, because of the combination of corners, people were able to position themselves and wrong foot the guy in front, weren't they, and try and have a move and a bit of curb usage, and they could get past. So we saw some good moves all through the race, and it was I think it was a triumph.
Yep, completely agree. I loved every minute of that weekend on and off the racetrack. Losail International Circuit. It was great.
Welcome to this edition of F1 Nation podcast with me, Damon Hill, and Tom Clarkson.
Back-to-back victories for Lewis Hamilton as he now sees the checkered flag in the distance, powers down the main straight and comes home to win the Qatar Grand Prix. Hamilton on top in Qatar.
Fantastic job, guys. Fantastic. Let's keep pushing, man. We can do this.
Max Verstappen, though, limiting the damage, started 7th, will come home to finish 2nd and take that fastest lap point as well.
But mate, that was damage limitation, a great recovery. Brilliant opening lap, so well done. Good points today and fastest lap.
Yeah, that was fun.
Fernando Alonso back on the podium in Formula One. Welcome back, Fernando. He comes home to finish 3rd. That is a brilliant result for him and for the Alpine team.
Yes!
Yes, get in there, you beauty.
Hey! Ole! Ole!
Ole, ole, ole.
Who is feeling happier after that race? The guy with the faster car or the guy with the points lead at the top of the championship? That's not the same person.
Do you know something? I don't think it's a time for happiness just yet. I think the tension is still too intense. It's too palpable, and they're so close to the finish now, and nobody really knows what's going to happen. So it's getting ahead of yourself, isn't it? I think, to celebrate. I mean, obviously I thought Lewis was, he won it, but he wasn't leaping up and down in celebration, and I think he's been pretty cool about keeping his emotions in check, as has Max Verstappen. He didn't come out of that race thinking, oh, it's a disaster and the championship is slipping away. He thought he'd done a good job with what he could do, but the performance advantage was definitely there for Mercedes.
So would you rather have the 8-point lead or the Mercedes car?
Well, Lewis likes to be the hunter, doesn't he? Yeah. So he's happy where he is, hunting, but he's got precious few opportunities now to make up the deficit. And we have got a statistical situation now where he could lose the championship to Max. Max could win it in the next round at Saudi Arabia if certain permutations take place. And you've got all the mathematical numbers there, haven't you? You can tell us exactly what has to happen and whether or not someone has to get the fastest lap. And, you're saying it's not going to happen?
Well, Damon, I think it's disingenuous to say it's going to happen at the next race, because it's not. Though. This is going to the wire.
It's the first time we've got all the way down to the last 2 races, and this is the first time you could actually say, if something happens to one of the protagonists, the other guy's going to become world champion. Well, no, it could only be Max, couldn't it? It couldn't be Lewis, I think, because he's got the deficit.
Yeah, well, look, if Lewis finishes 6th or worse in Saudi Arabia, Max Verstappen is champion. There you go. That's the only stat we need. There's various other permutations, but that's the headline one.
When was the last time he came 6th?
I don't know. Not in that rocket. Yeah, not for ages. Crikey.
Oh, he's got his new engine. Don't forget. And Toto said they're going to put the spicy engine in.
Well, so they're racing 2 engines at the minute, right? There's one, the 4th engine, which is that has the less power unit. Sorry,
yeah,
has less power. That's the one that he had at the weekend in Qatar. It's not quite as powerful, but such was the layout of that track that they thought they could save the rocket ship for Jeddah. Which I've just looked at a map of the track. I mean, it's scarily quick, Jeddah.
And it's 27 corners.
Yeah, 6 kilometres.
I mean, and long and thin is one way of describing it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's kind of hairpin at either end, and then just some really fast sweeps.
That helicopter is going to be going up and down that beach all night long. It's going to be oh dear, he's going to have to do a steep turn at each end as well, because they've got a bank corner, haven't they? Not for the helicopter, for the cars.
Well, but the helicopter's going to be banking round it, isn't it? I mean, it's a stunning track, but
12-degree banking.
Yeah, we love a bit of banking now. There's banking in Jeddah. There's going to be banking in Abu Dhabi. There wasn't much banking, it has to be said, in Qatar, though, was there?
No, it's bankless, wasn't it? It was flat as your hat.
Yeah.
It was. Well, turn one had a bit of banking, and I know that because I got a little trip round in a road car. So I went around it. But I love the way it kind of went long right, then long left, then another right, and then a right. You know, there was these combinations of corners, and you could find yourself slightly out of phase and out of position. And I think that you were saying, you were talking to Alex Albon last week. He was saying that on the simulator, he was predicting it'd be very difficult to work out your lines around there. So I think there was probably a lot of time. Certain drivers worked out the circuit better than others.
The Mercedes was just a very malleable car around that racetrack, wasn't it? And Lewis, do you think?
That's a good word.
Do you think Lewis was better this weekend than he was in Brazil?
I think he's been getting better and better. He does this, it seems to me, he goes on for kind of like on a sort of semi-engaged period in the middle of the season, and then when he needs to finish off the championship, he sort of becomes a totally focused individual.
And Lewis carried on where he left off, didn't he?
He did, in the same vein, and what a great race that was. Yeah. And so I think closing the gap on Red Bull, definitely a spring in his step.
Well, look, what about Max, though? I think if we're praising Lewis Hamilton, I think we have to be equally gushing about Max Verstappen, because his car wasn't as good in Brazil or Qatar, and yet he maximised everything that he had. I mean, that start he made on Sunday from 7th.
Yeah.
He was up to second by lap 4?
No, his start was stunning, wasn't it? It was a real racer's start. You know, kept his nose clean as well. As much as Lewis had done in Brazil, Max did the same thing and got himself into contention quite early on. And we thought for a minute, didn't we? We thought for a minute, oops, he's now surprised Mercedes and they've got a bit of more of a tactical problem. You know, who's going to pit first and the undercut and all that. But Lewis just kept that gap a bit too healthy for him to do anything about, and I think was comfortable with his pace. He didn't have to extract too much. But it's close, isn't it? I mean, you know, you think about 4 seconds, people saying, he had a comfortable 4 seconds advantage. I'm going to count to 4 seconds now. So that's 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. That's it. That's it for the whole Grand Prix. You know, I know it went up to about 8 at some point, but pretty much you can see him in the mirrors, can't you, for the whole race? And you can't make a mistake. So these guys they've got incredible concentration, and they can endure the pressure from beginning to end in an hour and a half Grand Prix, which is still amazing.
And they were light years ahead of everyone else, I thought, again at the weekend, which raises a question, Damon. And I was watching the Sky coverage at the weekend, and I was watching your golf feature. You sounds like you've got a bit of a slice going on at the minute, by the way.
I don't know why. I'm normally hook them. I mean, so anyway, I suddenly started to, it swung the other way. By
the way, are they genuinely quite good at golf? Because they seem to play a lot. They talk about it the whole time. It's Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris.
They seem to love it, yeah. I think it's a great way to unwind.
Are they decent?
They're pretty good, actually. They got good fundamental setup, and the backswing looks pretty good. But as I said, I think Lando's still got a bit to learn. He's only just taken up, but Carlos has been taking lessons from the top golf coaches in Spain since he was 3 or something. So he's got a bit of a head start.
But you said something to them, which I thought was interesting, which was when you're at the sharp end, you raise your game. And I came away thinking, wow, Damon, why would you do that? Surely you raise your game because the car's better, and suddenly for the same amount of effort, you're battling for P1 instead of P7. But then I started thinking of how good Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have been this year, and thought maybe the champ is right, in that these two have raised their game this year, and hence we've got this huge gulf between the top two and the rest. But why?
Maybe. What do you mean? Maybe the champ is right.
But why? Why do you
Tom,
raise
have
your
you
game?
been? Have you been at the sharp end of a Formula One World Championship?
That's the thing. That's right. That's where it falls down on my side. But why? Why?
Okay, so listen. When I was racing, no one. I was not picked out as the shooting star of the future in my career on my way up to F1. But then I got into some races with Michael Schumacher, and I was able to hold my own against him occasionally. And the only explanation I can have is because he made me dig deeper. I had to, in order to win. You can't come second. So I found out more about myself when you get to the sharp end. And it's just such a big difference in the motivation between being at the sharp end and being shooting it out for 10th. And every driver will deny this. They'll say, oh no, I'm giving it 100% every time. Well, when you interview the person at the end of the race, and you hardly saw him from beginning to end, and he'd been going around 11th and 12th and finally got up to 8th, nobody really cares that much, do they? He does. But when you've got everybody watching what's happening and you're at the front, then I don't know, somehow your performance goes up.
So you drove better in 93, 94, 95, 96 than you did at Arrows and Jordan in 97, 98, 99.
I think I responded to the event and the situation, and I'm sort of what I was saying to these guys is, I mean, Lando is a hot charger, as is Carlos, and they are fighting to show what they've got. But you ask Lando if he's more focused when he's fourth than when he was down at the back. I think that something happens. You get slightly dejected being 11th, it can be kind of demoralizing.
Well, here's the thing. Your words were echoing around in my head as I was listening to Toto Wolff telling Valtteri Bottas to overtake the cars in front. And hey, presto, what did he do?
Well, that's exactly my point, Tom. It took just one word from Toto and a bit of kind of, a bit of a crack of the whip, and suddenly, Valtteri was, wouldn't say unleashed, but he certainly made some progress. But it's very easy to get dejected, and you must never get, dispirited. But I think keeping the pressure up on yourself throughout a length of a Grand Prix is quite hard, because they're also doing a tactical thing. So they're not racing flat out all the time. They are having to measure out their tyres and God knows what else. So that's an issue, isn't it, in their defence?
Let's talk about Fernando Alonso, who went into this race as the highest driver in the championship without a podium. Fernando's last podium in Formula One was a long time ago. Hungary, 2014. It was podium number 97. Well, it's podium number 98 and a one-stop strategy that he has made work. Fernando Alonso back on the podium in Formula One. Welcome back, Fernando. He comes home to finish third. That is a brilliant result for him and for the Alpine team.
7 years, but finally we got it. I was waiting so long for this, so I'm happy.
One guy who doesn't need any encouragement, I think we'll agree on this, is Fernando Alonso.
Never. No. You just he gives everything all the time, and he was such a smart driver, and wasn't it great to see him get on the podium?
Oh, wasn't it just? So happy for him. 7.5 years.
7.5 years of trying various teams and a lot of pain and tears in the process, but put him in a car and he is just a machine, isn't he? He just becomes a kind of lap time producing thing. He just keeps pressing on.
Damon, I was confident for him. As soon as I heard a driver on Friday compare the Losail circuit to Mugello, which they did, I thought, Alpine are going to be strong, because they were really good at Mugello last year. Daniel Ricciardo finished fourth. It's the sort of long corners.
Right. It is very interesting, isn't it, how certain... I mean, Fernando came out with a very interesting point, which is we need to understand, as Alpine, why we're quick here. That's our problem, is it's not that we're not quick, it's that we don't understand why we're quick. But Fernando did a great job of eking out his tyres as well and keeping the performance up.
Hey, do you think... I mean, it was a third place on merit. I think probably helped by Bottas getting that puncture and not finishing the race. I think Bottas would have threatened him.
Yeah.
And without the virtual safety car at the end, do you think Perez would have got him? I don't think he would.
Well, they were hampered by their starting positions, weren't they? You know, he was elevated by their demotion.
Well, but he qualified, what was it, 5th on merit?
Yeah, no, he was always in the top 10, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they were looking really good. And it was possibly, if he'd managed to get past Pierre Gasly at the start, and got where he could have launched himself down the inside, which I wouldn't have put past him, to be honest. But he did behave himself quite well, I thought, in races. He was hard but fair.
But I mean, just so dogged, so determined, and actually, Ocon helped him as well. I thought, in the way he held up. Ocon said after the race that he reckons he held up Perez for 3 seconds, and that was ultimately the gap between.
For paying back Hungary, fighting like a lion to make his car as wide as possible.
It was such a joy, though. I feel that Fernando Alonso is someone whose talent deserves more than 2 World Championships and 32 wins. He deserved that podium. He's driven brilliantly and better and better and better this year.
Yeah.
And he delivered. And funnily enough, as he left the press conference after the race, I said, "Oh, all right. See you next time." And he went, "I think we'll be seeing you next year." Don't think it's going to happen in Jeddah or Abu, but anyway.
Well, he's not showing much sign of flaking out, is he? In his old age. How old is Kimi now?
Kimi's 42, isn't it? They both made their debut in 2001, Melbourne 2001. They've both, funnily enough, taken 2 years out. Remember, Kimi left Ferrari at the end of 2009 and then came back with Lotus in 2012. And Fernando left McLaren in, end of 18, and then came back this year with Alpine.
And you can't underestimate how difficult that is if you take a year out of Formula One at all. You know, to get yourself rewound up again to the pitch that you need to, it's not easy.
Can I just plug this week's Beyond the Grid?
Yeah. What is it about?
Fernando's on this week's Beyond the Grid. I spoke to him last weekend.
I should be keen to hear that, Tom. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I can never think of the questions to ask.
You just hope that they talk. And Fernando talked, actually. He wanted to talk.
And you're very good at listening when they do talk as well.
Well, I hope so.
Not like me, probably want to interrupt them all the time. But so yeah, it's worth it. Always, I listen to all of them, and if anyone hasn't listened to Tom's Beyond the Grid, then why not? Because you'll learn an awful lot. I've learned so much listening to your podcast, and that's enough praise. And yeah, otherwise I'll embarrass you.
That's enough. Please stop. Yes, please stop. Well, if you've got nothing to plug, Damon, I've got a message for any of our listeners out there or budding entrepreneurs that might be looking for some help to grow their businesses. When it comes to Formula One, we all know that teamwork is absolutely vital. You want the best people around you and working alongside you. Business is no different, and LinkedIn Jobs is the best way to find your new teammate if you're a small business owner, helping you to interview the right candidates for the job quicker than ever, and it's free. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can tap into the world's largest professional network of more than 30 million people, and posting a job takes just a matter of minutes. It's filled with useful tools and resources to help you filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And my advice is to spend your time crafting a solid job description and focusing on selecting up to 10 strong skills that you require for the position so that you can make sure your job is visible to all of the right people. So take a listen to this. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates worth interviewing faster, and you can post a job for free. Just visit linkedin.com/F1Nation. Again, that's linkedin.com/F1Nation to post a job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Damon, I feel that the Formula One World Championship is sort of locked in the Middle East at the minute, isn't it? We've had the Qatar Grand Prix last weekend, then of course we've got the doubleheader in Saudi and Abu Dhabi coming up, and then the start of next year we've got the Bahrain test followed by the Bahrain Grand Prix and then back to Saudi Arabia again. So who better to have on the show with us today than the presenter of Formula One in the Middle East for MBC Action, Sabine Sassine is with us. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too.
Now, we have just been discussing the top 3 finishers in Qatar at the weekend. Brilliant performances all round. What did you make of the race?
Well, I think it was a very interesting Grand Prix because we didn't know what to expect. I guess no one knew what to expect from the circuit, from both teams. I'm talking about definitely Red Bull and Mercedes. No one, like at the beginning of the weekend, we noticed that Lewis was a bit not sure of his driving, of the car, of the speed, etc. But things got better during Saturday, as we saw, and then the qualifying was amazing for Lewis. And also, we thought that it's going to be very difficult to overtake because that's the first impression that everyone had. And yet, during the race, we saw so many nice battles. It was very, very exciting. Frankly, when I saw the circuit first, I thought drivers might be complaining about it or not sure about it, or, because it's not made for Formula One. But probably we should have more circuits not made for Formula One to make it more exciting.
More bike tracks.
Yes,
is what we need.
Probably, yeah.
We've got this year's championship. We've got Qatar. We had Mugello last year. That was a great race as well. That's a sort of bike track, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It was awesome. I guess we're witnessing history, and we're so lucky, especially in our part of the world, to be seeing this battle finishing here, either in Jeddah or in Abu Dhabi. So I think we are so lucky. Fans are so lucky, and for F1, it's just awesome.
Sabine, how do we assess the desire to have Grand Prix there? Because it could be, I got the impression that it's sort of, there's a lot of Europeans that are there and they come to the race, but of the other people in Qatar and the people who live there generally, are they big F1 fans?
Okay, so things are changing a lot lately. Since 2019, Formula One became on free-to-air channel, and this helped a lot in the growth of the sport in the Gulf region, particularly because the Middle East, as you know, is divided into 3 parts. So you have the Gulf region where you have all these GPs happening, whether it's Bahrain, whether it's Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and Saudi. And you have Levant region, and also you have North Africa. So initially, and long time ago, most of the fans of Formula One would come from Levant or North Africa, because when I was young, for instance, I'm Lebanese, and when I was young, we used to watch this on free-to-air TV. So the Michael Schumacher era was on free-to-air TV in Lebanon. So that's why you see older fans who enjoy Formula One so much from this region. Now, the Gulf region, and specifically, if I want to take KSA, for instance, KSA is a very young audience. So they are discovering Formula One now with MBC Action, which is free to air. And it's been 3 years. The whole coverage is different because we're going to races. They're seeing familiar faces during the races. They're getting to know more what's happening behind the scenes, etc. So the whole sport is growing much, much more in the region. So yes, it's true. Before, you would see people going to watch Formula One mostly for the concerts, probably. But this year and the past year, well, there was no audience. But now you see much more people trying to book tickets and asking about Formula One and interested in Formula One from the region, and not only Europeans and Americans and from all over the world.
Can we guess who the most popular drivers are, or are there some sort of slightly obscure followings?
Mercedes and Ferrari both have a huge fan base. So in the region, they love Mercedes because they love the brand, they love the car. You see a lot of Mercedes on the streets. And they love Ferrari. They love Ferrari since Schumacher, because this is like the icon of the sport. And until now, whenever you ask someone who doesn't know much about Formula One, they will tell you Ferrari. And until now, most of the fans I hear on social media are either Ferrari, and I would say mostly Ferrari, and then second, mostly Ferrari. So they better do something really nice this weekend because they have a huge fan base.
You say you have a younger audience coming through. So what about the sort of the Max Verstappens and the Lando Norrises, all those sort of younger guys?
Yes, so this is something I noticed in between Saudis mostly. So younger people I think they love how bold Max is. They love his attitude. They love how bold he is, how can I describe Max, the way he is? So I get, for instance, my co-host during the podcast, he openly supports Max. So everything he cares about whenever we discuss any weekend is how Max did and how Red Bull did. So yeah, Max also. Norris, I think Norris has, I think ladies ask more about Norris. Then this is the type of question I would ask more about Norris, but also McLaren. Let's not forget that McLaren has also a big history in our region. And with the comeback of McLaren recently, it's also getting a little bit of hype in the region. I think when they go to Saudi, they will see love from absolutely everyone. All drivers will feel at home.
That's good to hear, isn't it, Tom? It's nice to break new ground and get to know people in different parts of the world that, obviously news coverage covers one side of the story, but when we go somewhere, we get to meet people and see how they live. We've been to places like Baku. I would never have gone to Baku ordinarily, but I go with the Grand Prix and you see the city and the people and how they live and stuff. And so that's a big part of the attraction of being in F1. So going to someone like the places we go to now in the Middle East is going to be in the Gulf region is going to be very interesting. Actually, I used to get a lot of emails, Sabine, from the Lebanon when I was racing. It was one of the definitely it was a big following. It was obviously getting quite a lot of coverage there. So
Sabine, when Damon rocks up in Saudi, is there a big following for the golden oldies? Come on. Is he going to be mobbed? Is he going to be mobbed at the airport?
You just said it's a very young audience, Tom.
Okay, so just so that we don't make it general, in Saudi, there are some real hardcore fans. What I'm trying to tell you is, and there's a culture, there's a very nice culture for motorsports, especially that the promoter and the minister of sport, both are into GT3 and motorsports. So there's this nice culture of motorsport in general. But what I'm trying to tell you is most of the population is young. So this young population have been watching Formula One for the past few years on MBC Action, probably from Netflix also, it helped. So both are discovering and asking questions, non-stop questions about Formula One on social media. And basically their big stars are the new stars, But Damon will make sure there's a big hype around you. I promise.
Listen, I've had enough hype for one lifetime. I'm very happy with where I am, but it's nice. It's nice to see that a new wave of people getting into the sport for the reasons that they like it as it is today, because it has changed gradually over time. But I think the new crew of drivers are much more adept at selling themselves and letting everyone know and letting everyone know what they're up to and what their hobbies are and stuff. And I think this is through social media. It's completely changed the way drivers express themselves and live their lives. So,
absolutely.
And that appeals to young people.
Absolutely, there are stars. You mentioned Baku, and Baku is the same for me. So the first time I went to Baku in 2019, I didn't know what to expect, and I was positively surprised with how beautiful the city is, with the mix of old town and new town. And I think F1 is an amazing promotion or an amazing ad to any country in the world. So this is what Jeddah will be getting out of hosting Formula One. So everyone visiting will be surprised and positively surprised to discover the city, the beauty in the city, the people, the culture, the old city and the new city. So I think it's a win-win situation for both.
Sabine, when did you last go to the track in Jeddah? What have we got coming our way? Is it finished? I know a lot of people are going to ask, Is it finished? Is it? Because I've seen some wonderful photos, but...
Yes, did you see the photos yesterday and the video? So yes, it's finished. What's the most impressive thing about this whole thing is the time frame, 8 months to finish such a circuit. It was so difficult, I think, for everyone. I had Karsten Thielke as a guest, and he told me Yes, we built so many. We had so many projects, but the time frame of this project is so challenging, and this is what everyone was talking about, and everyone was betting against it. A lot of people were saying, it will not finish, but yesterday it was nicely finished and done, and next week I guess we're all going to be there doing our things like we usually do. So.
And what about the climate? What do we need to pack?
It's perfect. So December is like the perfect weather. No, I'm serious. I usually love warmer weather, so I'm not going to lie to you, but the weather is really good. So it would be, I would say, a normal summer day for you guys. During the day, probably in the evening, you might need a little sweater, but you guys don't need the sweater. I might take one. You are used to much colder weather than this.
Is it going to rain? I mean, any chance of that?
Sometimes it does rain in December. Very few times it does, frankly. So you never know, but it's very occasional and it can happen. Expect some rain. No, don't expect. I'm joking. But if you have an umbrella, bring it. Why not?
No, I'm not bringing an umbrella for Saudi Arabia. I'm definitely... That's a ridiculous idea.
I might bring my swimmers, but that's...
I think Natalie was interested in the scuba diving, wasn't she? So at some point, there's apparently the Red Sea is very good for that kind of thing.
Yes, Red Sea is known for its it's the perfect place for scuba diving. I have friends who are planning also a trip soon to Jeddah, because apparently it's the new thing. The Red Sea in different parts of the world. So if you go to Egypt, you'll see a lot of people. It's very commercial. You'll have too many tourists there. But now in Jeddah, I think because it's new what's happening. So newly, a lot of scuba divers are discovering this area and going to see the beautiful creatures there. It's beautiful, beautiful.
Sabine, can we just touch on, it'd be interesting to get your take on this, because clearly there are some people who are concerned about us traveling to places that are quite a bit different to our culture. And Saudi has not been an open country for very long, has it really? I mean, this is a big step for them, isn't it? What's the reaction in the region to Saudi doing this? Is this a sign that things are changing slowly in Saudi Arabia?
Well, first, I don't see any concern to visit Saudi. I personally don't find any concern to visit any place in the world. I think when you visit any new place, you just discover the people, because when you're in your screen or at home just reading some random news about any country in the world, you might develop any perception of this place without visiting it. But when you visit a place, it's completely different, because you get to see what's inside. You get to meet people just like you and me, and see what they're doing. And what's happening right now in Jeddah is incredible. Change is happening in an incredible way. And everyone who's going is actually impressed with what's happening. Michael Massey was on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we spoke.
I listened to that podcast. It was very good.
Thank you. I'm happy you enjoyed it. So Michael is visiting several times, and we chatted a bit, like even outside the podcast, about the impressive progress that's happening in Saudi in general. Riyadh apparently also massive change, massive. I see pictures and videos, and you cannot believe it's Riyadh. And the same is happening in Jeddah. So I think you guys will be positively surprised.
Yeah, the track we're going to discover, I think it's going to be a big challenge by the looks of things. It's 27 corners long.
Yes.
And super fast as well, huh?
Yes, it's the fastest street circuit in the world, 27 corners, as you said, so the most curved, let's say, 3 DRS zones, also, so fastest in the world, tallest street circuit in the world as well, and it's a night race.
Hang on, Sabine, what do you mean by the tallest?
So yes, in terms of length.
The length. Oh yeah.
Longest.
If we put it on end, it would be also the tallest.
Yes, exactly.
I remember the Valencia street circuit. That wasn't a great racetrack. This looks like a great racetrack.
Well, they always said that Valencia wasn't a great track, but it actually produced some great races. It did. There was some. It wasn't a great track as such, but it was. I remember there was a couple of good ones.
I remember Valencia just being 90-degree corners.
Yeah, I always have this theory about like Canada. You'd never go and design a track like that now, but actually produces some of the best races.
Yes, exactly.
So
it's always about the outcome, I guess. But I would love to ask you, what did you think of the track? So is it a place you'd like to try?
Yeah, I'm a bit worried about the speed. I mean, there's not much runoff, and they've got the safer barriers, haven't they? They're using like they do in Indianapolis, but it's going to be very high speed and not much runoff. So high risk, high jeopardy. So that always gets your attention as a racing driver.
Yeah, no room for mistake.
I feel that we should start talking about the championship in all the different permutations, not just at the front, but also what's happening behind. Max or Lewis? Who's your money on, Sabine?
You know how many times I get asked this question, especially recently. Usually I would tell you who's my money on, but this time it's so close, so close. I think after what I saw yesterday, I think, especially with Lewis' old engine and Brazil was kind of incredible, I would put my money on Lewis this time. Well, I would love to ask you guys, do you think this circuit, Jeddah, will suit Mercedes more or Red Bull more?
No, I think it's a very difficult one to judge because it's such an unusual looking track. And I compared it to possibly like Baku, and I was told off by Ross Brawn, who said, no, it's not like that at all. It's a completely different type of track. It's got bank corners and stuff, and some of the sweeps look quite long. So I'm racking my brains. I think it could be a cross between something like Singapore and Baku. What do you think, Tom?
I think it's fast enough to start comparing it with a permanent racetrack.
Right, like what, Monza?
Well, I don't know.
Not Silverstone.
It's quite difficult when you're just looking at a map. It's quite difficult, isn't it? Until you get there. But I think it's going to be a very high average speed. I think grunt is going to be really important. And I think that immediately makes me want to side with Lewis Hamilton because I think he's going to use his latest engine when he gets there. Power unit, sorry, Damon. And I think he's going to be very strong. But equally, we thought Mercedes were going to dominate, or I thought Mercedes were going to dominate in Austin, and they got beat.
Yeah, we cannot predict this championship at all. The form, and also the gaps, the margins are quite tiny, nearly always, aren't they? I mean, 0.3 is a big difference. I know that Lewis put it on pole by nearly 0.4 or something in Qatar, but that's an unusually big differentiator, isn't it? So,
and there will be jeopardy. There will be jeopardy in Jeddah as well because it's a street track. The walls are close. I'm not saying that Max or Lewis will crash necessarily, but I would imagine there'll be yellow flags caused by other people during qualifying, during the race. There will be safety cars, and how that all falls could have a huge influence on strategy, on grid positions.
Well, I think it's great that nobody knows where they're going. This is a completely unknown place, unknown track, and it's at that crucial point in the championship. This is going to be so important for the championship, this race coming up.
Other teams that we haven't talked about so far on this pod, the Ferrari and McLaren battle. I thought both teams had quiet weekends in Qatar. Ferrari coming home 7th and 8th. Sainz, your golfing partner, Sainz, ahead of Leclerc, with Norris in 9th and Daniel Ricciardo out of the points. Daniel Ricciardo...
Lando had the puncture thing, didn't he? So that he lost a good position that could have been much better than
could have been. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. And Daniel Ricciardo had this very bizarre problem where he was having to fuel save he said half a kilometre per lap. It was about 2 seconds a lap from very early on in the race because there was some software glitch. And about halfway through the race, they suddenly realised, oh no, this is all an error. You've got enough fuel. Off you go again. But
that's a bit annoying, isn't it? When you've been asked to go slower and slower and slower, and eventually they say, no, you can go faster again now. But you'd wish to have known that earlier. But
I felt very sorry for McLaren, actually. They've had good pace over these last 3 races, and yet I think they've come away with, 4 points?
Yeah, only 4 points. The thing is also... Seidel was a guest, and I asked him this question early on, so a few weeks back, if he feels confident that they would keep their 3rd position because this is where they were. And then he had a very positive attitude and very, positive answer. And then since the guys keep on, I wouldn't say, losing their fight against Ferrari since because of that Ferrari engine change at some point. So yes, unfortunately, the gap is getting bigger and bigger. And I guess, I don't know, do you think, guys, during the last two races, McLaren would be able to do anything against Ferrari?
I think they've got a struggle now, haven't they, to do anything about Ferrari. I think Ferrari seem to have kind of just inched enough ahead. And Charles's actual result, or his qualifying, was artificially bad, I think, in Qatar, because he found he had got a damaged tub, hadn't he?
Mm-hmm. Damon, he did, but he damaged it on his first run in Q1.
No, right. So it's his fault. But he fixed it, and then the car was quicker again. But the damage was done.
But they're kind of 39.5 points McLaren are behind Ferrari now. So I think it's going to take a big upset for that to change. So Ferrari P3, McLaren P4, Alpine have now got 25 points on AlphaTauri in 6th. So that looks like, the battles, it's for first and second. Forget the rest. That's what we've just concluded. It's 8 points between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton at the top of the drivers, and 5 points between Mercedes and Red Bull. There we go. Look at that. That's all we need to focus on.
That's what most people will focus on, Tom. Although, of course, we do love to see all the other stuff, because actually there was a lot of entertainment in Qatar that went through the overtaking of these minor places. I could say minor, but I understand they're important to the teams. But there was some good dicing, I thought, and good overtaking and a bit of wheel-to-wheel action at Qatar in the midfield, which you clearly don't get quite as much of that at the front. It's much more nuanced at the front, isn't it?
And Aston had a good weekend in Qatar, didn't they? With Lance Stroll in 6th and Vettel getting that last point in 10th as well.
Again, it was odd. It was odd to see how cars performed better in the race than they did in qualifying in Qatar. But
and unless you were driving an AlphaTauri.
Exactly. My thoughts exactly. Unfortunately.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Yeah. All in all, it's a pretty good setup for the first inaugural Jeddah Grand Prix. How many people do you think are going to fly in, Sabine, to this event from the region? Is there going to be a lot of influx from motorsport fans?
Yes, I guess a big majority will be from Saudi, because Saudi fans are flying from everywhere in Saudi to Jeddah to participate in this event, and also from the region. Yes, so definitely from here, from UAE, from Bahrain and Oman, from the Levant area also. So yeah, I guess from the whole region, everyone wants to see what this Jeddah Grand Prix is all about.
Well, it's going to be very exciting, and thank you so much for your time, Sabine, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, guys, thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Wakey, wakey! There's just under 5 weeks left until Christmas, which seems like a long time, but those weeks are going to fly by. So make sure you don't get caught in the trap of doing all your shopping last minute, like me. And if you're after gift ideas or something to stick on your own wish list, then look no further than Manscaped. Yes, that's right. The leading men's hygiene brand has just launched new products, including their all-new ultra premium body wash and a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. The body wash is infused with aloe vera and sea salt to keep your skin feeling clean and moisturized, while their 2-in-1 conditioner gets to work strengthening your hair and hydrating your scalp. They're the perfect products to complement their Perfect Package 4.0 kit. Now, in this package, you'll get Manscaped's Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. We've talked about this before. It features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. And it's waterproof, so it's the perfect tool for an in-shower shave, which means less mess in the sink, doesn't it? You'll also get the added bonus of their Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant, and a pair of anti-chafing briefs. What more could any man ask for? So Get 20% off and free shipping with the code F1Nation at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code F1Nation. It's one of my favourite bits of the show, and I feel like we haven't had an Ask Damon on F1 Nation for quite a while. There's quite a backlog of questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Tom. Come on, hit me.
Hi, Damon. Hi, TC. Love the show, guys. My name is Cy Ferguson from Los Angeles, California. Hey, Damon, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, who is the most unappreciated multi-world champion? In my case, I think it's Alain Prost, because everybody fanfares over Senna, but that's my take. What do you think?
Hi, Cy. Oh, I love the way you say hi, TC, because that sounds like a line from Top Cat. Do you remember that? It was a guy, it was Benny, wasn't it? You go, hi, TC. Anyway, so, yes, Cy, it's a good question.
I was thinking either Jack Brabham, or I was going to say Niki Lauda.
That's what came into my mind as well. I mean, this was the thing that grated with him a little bit in the Hunt versus Lauda film, was that it was about the crazy charismatic driver, and Niki kind of felt like he was a little bit overlooked by that. And he did always come across as being very calculating and methodical, but he was a very fast driver, and he was a very intelligent driver.
Brilliantly fast, brilliantly intelligent. And anyone who beat the 1984 spec Alain Prost, I think that's when Prost was at his absolute peak, and to beat him in his penultimate year of Formula One.
Yeah, outsmarted him. Which
brilliant.
What about Piquet? Was Piquet underappreciated?
That's a good shout, actually, Damon. That's a good shout.
Oh, thank you.
So what, he won a couple for Brabham and then one in a Williams.
There can't be that many multiple champions out there. Hang on. We're going to go through the list here, aren't we?
And you have the final say, because this is your bit of the show.
Oh, no. Oh, God. So it has to be multiple world champions. Oh, Sebastian Vettel. He's a multiple world champion.
Gosh.
I think it could be Sebastian Vettel.
Why do you think he's underappreciated?
I don't know. I think it was all a bit too much too soon. And he didn't have an era. I mean, there was a very short span where he was dominating, wasn't it? For a guy who's won 4 titles, it all came along in a bit of a rush, like, buses.
Another good shout. Piquet, okay, go on then. Piquet or Vettel, who is it?
Okay, let's go Piquet. I think we need to appreciate Piquet a bit more.
Why don't we appreciate Piquet? I do. 81, 83, 87 were his championships. I think our judgment is slightly affected by how long the driver continues after his last world championship. My view of Piquet, he was brilliant in that Brabham, and Nigel Mansell was a great racing driver, and he beat Nigel Mansell to the 1987
on consistency, on his consistency, because those days they didn't drop the scores, did they? Do you remember? That's the story about that. But then, as he revealed years later, he was driving most of that season with concussion, and he couldn't, because he had that massive shunt at Imola, and he did something with his sleep patterns. So he kept all that quiet. He was a difficult character, I think, sometimes, Piquet, but still to win 3 titles, he must have, he was fast and he was good at what he did.
Yeah, and my view of him is muddied by the Lotus years where he wasn't particularly quick, and then he goes to Benetton and falls out with Flavio, and then Schumacher comes in and shows him the way home at those last few races in 91. But in his pomp, if you're going Piquet, I'm supporting you every step of the way, champ.
Let's do it. Okay, we've done Cy, and you've got a backlog of questions, so I think we need another one.
Hi, Damon. This is Paul from Louisiana, USA. My question is, with 2 drivers we have on the grid right now that are sons of famous racing drivers in Max Verstappen and Mick Schumacher, do you think they're experiencing any extra stress and expectations on them having famous fathers? Did you yourself experience any extra expectations on you being the son of a famous racing driver yourself? Anyway, keep up the good, great podcast. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, you're right. I was the son of, and When I crossed the line in 96 to win the championship, then Murray Walker introduced me as son of the famous racing driver Graham Hill, and you can't get away from it. That is a fact of our careers. You know, if you follow it in the father's footsteps in career-wise, then it's going to be mentioned, isn't it? And my dad left quite a big legacy, not as big as Mick's dad. Of course, he's only got 7 titles to compare himself to. But Max is a little bit like Jacques Villeneuve in that Jacques' dad did never win the world title. But obviously, it was a very famous racing driver. Joyous had a huge following, but didn't win the title. So, and Max hasn't won the title yet either, but he's won a lot of Grand Prix. So you could say that Max has sort of superseded his dad's career record. And Nico Rosberg kind of won more Grand Prix than his dad and equaled him on titles. I won more Grand Prix than my dad, but I didn't equal him on titles. People do expect, they want to know whether or not it's passed on somehow to second generations. I mean, it's of interest, but ultimately you will be judged by how good you are. People will not put you in a car just because you got a famous name.
There you go, Paul.
Well, listen, thanks very much for those questions. I know that there's a bigger backlog than we can manage to get through, but have a go anyway yourself. If you've got some burning question you want to put to me, to askdamonhill@gmail.com. And if it's a voice note, we can play it out on the show and have a go at answering it. And we'll look forward to more of them, because we're going to be getting some seriously interesting questions, I expect, coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Well, we've had a good week, and then we've got 1 week off, and then back out to Saudi. Can't wait. And thank you to Sabine as well. It's great to get her thoughts on what we got coming our way in Jeddah.
It was.
The answer is lots. Yeah. Very, very fast racetrack. All right, Damon, look, it's been great catching up. I feel we've seen a lot of each other recently. It's been fab. Have a good week, and I think this is where we say goodbye. F1 Nation is produced by F1
in association with Audio Boom Studios. Adios.